And even the biggest atheist can stand there and just have his jaw drop to the ground when he experiences on the top of a mountain a sun going up. The fact that in Japan, it has already come into a common medicinal prescription to let a patient walk a garden, a park, or a forest. Once you go into the forest, it's almost like stepping to a cathedral.
Hi, this is Sifu Slim, author of The Aging Athlete. In this book, you're going to get to hear about two different groups of former high-performance athletes. One group, which is made up of 90% of the former athletes, does not do physical activity on a regular basis and tends to suffer the consequences of a sedentary lifestyle. The other group, which is made up of 10% of the former athletes, is doing physical activity on a regular basis and tends to thrive through the aging process, or at least has a better chance at coping with the aging process. We could have taken these folks to a lab and done all kinds of tests on them. Instead, we slowed them down and sat them down and asked them, in their own words, to describe why they're wired the way they are, so that we all, former athletes and non-athletes, can use some of their inspirational and motivational and mindset lessons in our own lives. I hope you pick up a copy today. You can go to theagingathlete.com, and when you have a chance to read it, I'd love to hear back from you to find out what your thoughts are on the stories of these aging athletes. Hi there, I'm Sifu Slim, and I'm really excited today, but I'm excited in a mellow way, because that's the way you open up your heart and mind and allow the energy to leave you, something leave you when you want to receive. You can think of a bucket. When you have a bucket, you can pour some things out, like the old water that might be a week or two old, and you can rinse it out and then go to the fresh source of water and put in some new water that's fresh and vibrant. And that's how I'm going to experience this call today with a gentleman who comes from very far away from where I am right now. And he's going to fill us up like you do when you hit a yoga retreat, a mindfulness retreat, a health retreat for mind, body, and spirit, all of these wonderful things. So I'm going to bring in Albert Emmanuel Kessler, who's over across the seas from me and across land masses. He's going to tell us where he is and what he does, and maybe he'll even give us a tour. If we're lucky, we'll get a little quick tour of the location where he currently is. So come on in, Albert, Emmanuel, and say hello to everybody.
Thanks, C, for the introductions. Thanks, folks, for having me. It's a real honor. My first, I think, my first appearance in an international podcast. So I'll just jump right into the first question: where am I? Before we go into the who am I? I am in the very outskirts of still Europe, but far more near to Africa than to the old world. I'm in the Canary Islands, and the southern western part of it, which is called La Palma. They also call it La Isla Bonita, the beautiful island. It is a breathtaking atmosphere of both volcanic energy and the Atlantic Ocean. So without further ado, I will actually gladly show you around a little. We're here on a terrain that is basically in construction. There are lots of little houses and domes now in creation. Right now, I'm in a caravan for the practical reasons. So this is kind of my office here. This is what I'm looking at when I do podcasts and stuff. But I'll also get outside and give you a little bit of a glimpse of how wild this country actually is. So here you get the barranco, which is basically the valley. Just jump right up. and lots of wild goats every now and then running through. And this is the view of the Atlantic Ocean, vast, and the winds are very, very uh, changing every day. Basically, it can be very windy, or it can be actually quite warm and sunny. Sometimes even so sunny that I have to take off my shirt. The the playa, the beach is not so near as you think, but the countryside has all these beautiful plants, which are quite specific here. Lots of local cactus, and quite a few of them are edible. So there's lots of plants that are actually very similar as the picture you gave, very mellow. They can actually hold in water very well, and you just take a leaf and eat them and have basically your nutrition of plant medicine in front of the house. And we are actually doing a lot of research here with a bunch of people in communal lifestyle, community building, and also biological building, so round houses, which is very much also to connect it to the topic that we will be talking about, which is a pain free lifestyle. I'm putting that into inverted commas, and I'll go into that later, because pain-free is something that is a very utopic phrase. However, we found things and techniques and therapies that create a lifestyle that can lead into long-term pain-free feeling and quality. Yeah, so this is where I am. And Sifu, what are your impressions so far?
I think it's wonderful, Albert Emmanuel, that you are at a location that allows you to experience the transformation of the land, perhaps, of your mindset, of your connection to that land, and then to the people who visit you or work with you on that
Mm.
land and in your projects and research. I think it's a wonderful place for an experience. Neither you nor I were born in La Palma, so when we go there, we get to experience all of the energy from the people who live there and the people who live there for millennia. So I think it's a great way to go, maybe challenge yourself, and then also connect with yourself in a new and invigorating way.
Mm. Absolutely. So the lifestyle that you can actually live here is being in the sun, being working with your hands outside, being surrounded by the elements, fresh winds that carry the salt into your lungs, that carry lots of stories, as you already said. This land is old, and there is definitely also a very indigenous population that somehow you kind of still feel the spirit. It is a volcanic energy. So we are talking about this earth having like fire beneath it. So lots of chi that basically literally is feelable. And the possibility to actually live from the land. So we are talking about oranges, lemon trees, lots of vegetables that are like directly in front of us. We're just picking them and making this wonderful food in like ready to be to be part of our bodies. And the movements that we are doing are constantly movements that are connected to natural environment. So my feet, my paces are always adapting with every step to the rocks, to everything that is there, constantly creating new impulses for my body to adapt to this being in the moment, and definitely also being connected to the land. You've talked about grounding workshops, training that you will be giving now. What we are trying to make as an experience for people in urban cultures here is what we are living it. I mean, when I'm working, I'm barefoot. And this is also already very much the preparation of basically the things that we also recommend in our trainings for becoming pain-free.
I I was thinking as you were talking about that, Albert, of some of the questions I wanted to ask you just about the land. The first one, Albert Emmanuel, is the ground when you dig down about, let's say, this much, which in inches, about 6 inches, 5 inches, is it dry? And the next question it is a land with the absence of worms, los gusanos in Spanish. You're in a Spanish speaking place. Do you have worms there or infrequent? And how dry is it once you dig down a little bit?
So, when you dig down that far, it really depends on the season, because the rainy season is from I would say November till February, and then it becomes drier and drier. Yes, the land the terrain gets a little moisture. The more you work the shovel. And yes, we do have worms. However, they are different here. They are more what we call in German Tausendfüßler. These are these are the ones that have like thousands of little legs, and they do very similar work like the worms. We do have worms too. What we have en masse is fertile soil, because the volcano always creates such a basic exchange of geological levels, that what is there just needs to be watered in order to I mean, we do every now and then also take a little bit of earth from the mountains, because there is more earth that is connected to forest, and we mix it. And if then the connection with water and sun comes, then the veggies are actually sprouting quite beautifully. However, you need to take care of your terrain. So you need to have like the connection to the water sources, which are enough. So there is definitely enough water here. But you are, yeah, as a kind of a citizen, you kind of have to make sure that you kind of get the permissions to use the water.
My first week of taking language classes in 1997 in Benalmádena by Malaga, a beach town that's grown incredibly since the 1980s, was an older professor who told us that the Iberian Peninsula was inhabited by people who chopped down all the trees before the Common Era. And what that did is it eliminated the moisture that would keep the cloud formations there. So once they chopped all these trees down, mainly for firewood, but also for things that they want to build out of wood, you can imagine boats, houses, spears, chairs, all the things you can build from wood. But they changed the climate before the Common Era. And so no more big trees because there was no more big rain. And then the winds that came in from North Africa, the Levante and these other winds, would bring the dried air and the dried sand and the particles, and they would dump it on Spain. So it just became more arid. And then the only two trees that grow really well, as far as I know, in the southern portion of Andalusia, are the olive trees and the cork trees. But the trees that were there BC were more like France and in Austria before the people chopped down those trees. Had you ever heard that?
It's not the first time that I've heard about that. Thank you, C4, for reminding me. We do have a little bit of a similar situation on the island, that it used to have much more jungle in like thousands of years ago, before the conquerors came. They're doing a very good job to still keep at least the pine wood quite alive. I feel that there's quite an awareness also from the governments here to actually keep them growing and regrow them. The pine trees here have a very special abilities. They have extremely long needles, and so they don't only drink from the soil, but they actually drink from the fog that is brought from the mists that are brought from the ocean every morning and every night. And this is something where you see that there is such as a strong willpower of life energy around us, and you can actually see it very especially well because you were talking about arid zones in España. Here, the volcano actually broke out 3 years ago, and 2 years ago, a huge fire consumed the whole island. And now 2 years later, and it's very interesting because it kind of was synchronized with the COVID crisis of the world. And 2 years later, everything is blossoming and greener than before. Even most of the permaculture gardens that were ashes, I'm telling really death. There was nothing there, are actually more abundant now than they were before. So there was a clear message from nature. This is just a portal. This is just a necessary um, Shiva phase. Yeah, if we are talking about the yogic tradition of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the necessary destruction phase that needed to be there so that the new era actually can come into life. And this is definitely also a reason why I do a lot of my health research and also lots of my health programs here because the atmosphere already says yes to life. It is visible around you.
Well, thank you, Albert Emmanuel, for sharing that. It's quite a story, and and you and I were both Europeans. I'm a Northern European, so a lot of Germany, English, Irish, and some Polish people who lived in the Austro-Hungarian Empire when there was no Poland, and then came to America in the Northeast via my great grandfather was the person that brought my DNA, from Europe. That's the closest descendant to Europe in the 1880s. But I have people on my mother's side who go back to the 1600s from England, landing in Massachusetts. So mostly European and Northern European roots. But I'm very attracted to Spain and Central and South America, the Latin culture, the Latin dances, the Latin food, and good old sunshine. How about you?
Oh, absolutely. Sifu, I am actually very much a child of the South, always was. My mother actually came over from Chile in third generation. They were immigrants from Switzerland, which is really sweet for me because the Swiss citizenship is passed on by blood, not where you were born.
Wow.
So I'm very lucky to have an Austrian citizenship and a Swiss passport too. But my mother spoke Spanish with me because she was in second generation from Chile, from South America. My father had a very typical Viennese heritage. He had a Czechoslovakian grandmother, actually from Czechia. So my granny was from the old altes Böhmen, as we say it, but was an English teacher. And she decided to speak English with me. So I grew up in a really multilingual family, and I'm very, very grateful until this very day for having had this gift. And I was one of those children who actually embraced it. I was very responsive. So with my grandmother and with my mother too. And I had a lot of possibilities to use those language abilities on my travels. When I was a performing artist, so like almost 15 years ago, I also had the opportunity to travel with a lot of people from Russia and from Hungary. So I picked up a little bit of these languages too, which are really completely opposite to anything that is Roman or has the kind of the Southern mentality. And for many years, I was very much in pain, also really in pain because of the missing of sunlight, especially in the months of January and February. I was fine with Christmas. Christmas in winter is great. And you want it cozy inside when it's cold outside, and the Christmas tree and the candles. This is kind of creates an atmosphere of bonding and togetherness. But I was really almost depressed when in January and February the sun was still not coming out, and if she was coming out, it was so little, and it was constantly cold. So my southern blood was really quite suffering. And there were actually two remedies, if we're now already starting to go into the topic, that helped me to go through that. Actually, three. One was spirituality of my Celtic ancestors that kind of taught me that the mists and the fog of winter are not necessarily something that are bad and keeping away the sun, but they are actually a symbol of the veil of the Big Mother that actually cloaks you in her bosom so that you can sleep better. And if you would actually follow the call of nature, which most of the animals do, and just dig yourself a nice nest and just stay in bed for most of that time, you would be actually quite fine. You wouldn't feel that lack so much. So that actually gave me a little bit of comfort. And the other thing was ice bathing, which I started in 2019. I did it before, but 2019 was absolutely necessary because that was my big transformation in my life. So the life of the artist ended, and the life of the natural therapist and community coach and also pain coach became a reality. And in order to cure pain, you actually have to really suffer it, or at least have to know it. So this was my big depression time. This was a lot of crisis that was absolutely necessary. And Mother Nature actually brought me back to life. I was in a very dark place where my thoughts were clouding my judgment. And I was bringing that also to my partner, my wife then, whom I had a relationship for almost 20 years, said, "Look, now I don't recognize you anymore. There is a personality that is coming out that I never knew, that I didn't fall in love with, that I definitely didn't marry. I cannot talk to him anymore. You have to bring the other guy back." And in that moment, I couldn't. And I was like ready to say, okay, then I have to find somebody else who listens to me. And that was the River Danube. That was the the goddess Dana, or Danu, as they called her, which is basically running through Vienna. And I made an attempt to basically, I think there was a part of me that said, I want to end my life, but then there was the other part that said, I want to actually have a very intense experience. And Sifu, I'm telling you, if in November, or actually what was it? Was it? No, it was November, and it was freezing cold. We had like -5 degrees Celsius outside, or and -10 degrees the winds. And I actually, in my complete depressed state, I actually took a dip. Just in like 20 seconds. And in this moment, the pain of the cold attacked my system so severely that in my mind there I had a comparison, a very clear picture of this is the basically the thoughts that created the toxicity in your mind, and this is what real pain and also real half death experience is about. And by knowing the difference between those two, I came out of the water. I was steaming. My blood was kind of full through my whole body. I was kind of red, like as a cancer, but I was so alive. I never felt better in my life after this pain experience. And this is where it actually kick-started into the philosophy that later on I found out was actually used by quite a lot of the most successful pain management therapists in the world. That in order to cure pain, you have to experience it in a way where you go into it, but then come back into a comfort zone. And I'm telling you, no other therapy, but this actually brought me back, and I stayed with it for over 3 months, going into the cold water from November, December, January, almost until May, at least every second day. Mm.
The journey through life with its ups, downs, and in-betweens, and its chaos, which is always present in the, if you're on phones, computers, or in an area with lots of people, there's always chaos, it seems. And then the crisis points where we turn our head and we see something and it just doesn't connect with us. And then we get shunned. We turn our head to the left. And then we get a phone call, somebody else in crisis that can't help us. It's sometimes when it crumbles from all directions, internally, externally. It just keeps happening. And I don't know anyone who hasn't been there before. I really don't. I would guess that if there is such a person, they would be missing some of the experiences of life. And it's this journey of survival and trying to thrive and trying to help other people. I think that makes life incredibly engaging. That's probably a good
Mm.
place to start. And I'm gonna
Mm.
share with you on the healing side and the sun. I have a contact whose father was an invalid now in his late 80s, and he had lots of health crises, including his mind was going from some of the older age neurological problems. And they lived in a place with big trees on the wrong side of the hill. So the sun is over here, and they lived on that side. And
Yeah.
they had trees and not a lot of sun. And I said, look, I said, your dad was in the military. I said, they're veteran centers, either by the day or by him living there, where they could take him out on the wheelchair and put him in the sun whenever there was sun. And if there's not sun, they could put some wool blankets over him, a down jacket, and even those heaters at a restaurant, that throws off a lot of heat, those gas heaters at the cafes. Those are the types of things I think this gentleman needs. And that's my intuition and my background in health, my
Mm.
background in lifestyle. And I'm also perhaps the only American, and I would guess this is true. I don't know if it's true, but I would guess it's true, who's ever lived in a Spanish convalescent center who did not have to live in a Spanish convalescent center. I was living there in the annex, so I was involved with the functioning of the convalescent center, and I was involved in coaching the director of it. But I didn't live, next to the seniors. I had to go up a level to be there. But I
Mm.
was with the seniors 5 hours a day, and sometimes 8 hours a day, and I got to see how they lived, and a staff of almost 200 people. So lots of, it's a 24-hour shift. So there's three different shifts of people. So I really thought I understood seniors after doing that in 2003 and 2004 before I moved to Santa Barbara, where I am now. And it was great for my Spanish, my writing, my connection with self, my connection with the dry, arid climate that I talked about before. This was in Granada. And, there were not a lot of trees on the hiking trails in Granada. And it was, if you went skiing in the place outside of Granada, in the Sierra Nevada, it's kind of a moonscape. When you leave Denver and you go to the ski resorts that are somewhere between an hour and a half and 3 hours away, you go through some of that, what we call moonscape, where it's just rock that could be
Mm.
eroding soil with no life on it whatsoever. So the Sierra Nevadas that I experienced driving up there, and before the snow came in that area of near Granada, was kind of like that. And it was a whole new thing for me to experience because I grew up skiing in America with trees and in Europe with trees. And so I was just so used to skiing with a mountain that had trails. But if you went lower than the top of the mountain, there were lots of trees. So maybe share with you if you
Mm.
have any comments about me taking the senior and wanting to get him out in the sun so he could feel that warmth and feel that energy from the sun.
Yes, actually, that's thank you, Sifu, also now for directing me back to the third to the third pain management towards the cold and the dark. That is actually what I'm experiencing right now. I'm actually going to actually living that pace, or that word of changing the climate zone, like our brothers the birds do when they leave for Africa. Basically, the storks, they already leave in late autumns, early winters, and I did in this case in the month of February, quite early. So those months that I usually used to challenge me the most, and that I could kind of battle with spirituality and with cold bathing, especially in the last 5 years, and it has something to do with age. You already mentioned this idea of taking care of veterans, taking care of the aging people, that you feel cold in the bones a little more the older you get. And the sun, especially when it is so clear, still filtered by a very good ozone level, and so direct, like it is here in La Palma, definitely also in Spain, is something that money cannot buy as a basically as a healing atmosphere. And there is a reason why most of the blue zones, I'm quite sure you already made a podcast about this topic, are zones that are in very, very sunny areas. We're talking about Okinawa, we're talking about Sardines, we're talking about the places where people work with their physical bodies into the late age of the 90s sometimes, still the land in the sun. They are constantly in connection with basically all the elements. They are near to the earth. They feel the sun. They are outside at least 5 to 6 hours a day, daily, and then they are in a climate zone where the sun is available, I would say, 3 quarters of the year. And this is a luxury that most Europeans, North Americans in I would say, like the normal northern zones just do not have. And there is a quality to it that I feel now, since I'm in my golden age of 44 now. I want to keep experiencing. I feel myself very much becoming a nomad, a traveler who will be in Europe in the high summer season, going into the early winter. I really feel still I want to experience Christmas in winter, but then pretty much latest at New Year's Eve, I will be departing and coming pretty much quite sure to this area here, because it is so rich, not only in landscape and sunny area, but also in mindset of health and holistic lifestyle. And I feel that in order to grow holistically, you'd have to eventually surround yourself with like-minded people, with people who think and believe in the same topics. And when you come with terms like prana, chi, life energy, they don't look at you as if you came from a different planet, but they are saying, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I've done this so many times. Thank you for this variation and this new approach from your side." So we are talking about a culture that has been developed here since the late 70s, 60s, 70s already. La Palma was kind of what we call in German Aussteigerinsel, so people who actually wanted to leave the system, who wanted to live differently, already started to move here, mostly people from German-speaking countries. So we have a population of at least 11% in La Palma, which is purely German-speaking. And you can feel there is a little bit of a tension between the Palmeros and the people who are creating these new communes. However, they actually brought the bio supermarkets, the biological organic products into this area. They brought yoga and all the holistic approaches to health and lifestyle into this area, and even many people who are living here for some time are benefiting from that. So there is a very beautiful subculture combined with a breathtaking atmosphere of land and climate that creates, I think, an ideal mix for longevity and awesome awesome pain-free lifestyle.
Albert Emanuel, können wir ein bisschen Wasser trinken mit einem Brindis?
Bitte. Brindis.
Ein
Prost. Prost, lieber
Prost.
Sifo.
So my toast, if I had to give one right now, based on the time that we've shared today, is connecting with nature, with history, with our predecessors on these plots of land that we come to, accepting the transformation. So you mentioned the 11% German people bringing some things that I would say were needed. I think not to discount all of Christianity or churches and temples and mosques and these types of things, but I think the world was ready for the idea of mindfulness, of being vulnerable in a small group setting, which is not easy to do at church. Some churches do that type of thing, but they'll have like oftentimes a book which is translated by different leaders of the church in different ways, so it's not always easy. But I think if you go to yoga centers across America and across Europe, and I've been to them in Central and South America, I think you would find a pretty similar flavor at these yoga centers, these meditation centers, and they all have their different ways of handling certain parts of it. But I think you'd find a lot of similarities, and I think you find people being drawn to this because it's this idea of being heart open and mind open and experiencing and not shutting down the experience, which I think can happen. Of course, it's not what many of the churches want to do, but I think there's a lot of control by shutting down experience and behavior and not letting people speak about what's going on in their mind and their heart, and allowing that energy to flow more and be around these people in a communal setting, whether it's for an hour or for a month or for 10 years, like some people might live in a center, an organic farm yoga retreat type thing for 10 years, or maybe for a lifetime. Tell me if any of that's resonating with you, Albert Emmanuel.
Sifu, very much so. The pop culture of yoga, which kind of was brought to us Westerners as a form of exercise, which is, as we all know, who are dug a little deeper, a far more holistic approach to life itself, and the asanas and the meditation and the practice is only a petal of this flower that includes a lot of lifestyle of service, of right nutrition, devotion, also to a certain amount of values, which are very, very compatible with anything that most of the big religions in their core, in their message of the heart, do deliver to. In fact, here you will find a culture that is definitely not just focused on the East. These people are researchers. They look into everything. They look into different Celtic approaches. They do look into different approaches of the land here. They definitely also research, and I was fortunate to actually have been to meet one of the women who were basically one of the first people who actually took this opportunity in the 60s, 70s, to move from Germany to a Spanish-speaking country to completely live this communion with nature, who has been through a lot of different experiences of spirituality and actually found her her core of belief in the very, very old form of Christianity, in the scriptures of the Essenes, which are have the legend to be the school in which Jesus Christ actually was trained. So we very often in the Bible, you just know the son the life of Christ until his 12th birthday, and then there is nothing, and then he comes back 30 almost 30 years old, and already he is a prophet, and as is doing all those miracles. And what happened in between, and these scriptures of these scenes that have been translated now by few people, and I'm quite sure they are also available in English. They are best-selling books, are so beautifully compatible to everything that we as mindful people already are living. The communion with nature, the communion with mindfulness, the communion with positive thinking, the communion with the divine Father in heaven, but also the divine Mother on earth, with which many people in conservative Christian communities who are thinking a little critically actually feel that there is a lack of feminine energy. There's a lack of the big mother, which many people just need as much as the loving father. And so basically here in this pool of all kinds of spiritual and holistic approaches, the very core of Christianity came to me. I'm actually reading them. I can actually show you guys so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. This is, and it's of course in German. These are the books. The guy who translated this is Bodo Szekely, a Hungarian guy. And these are the Essener, die unbekannten Schriften der Essener. And I was studying the Bible quite a bit, and I was, giving it a chance to kind of reach me on many levels, and it was always interesting, but I never was. I've always felt I'm not touched in the heart. The messages, the life of Jesus Christ was always inspiring me. I said, well, this is such a cool guy. I want to be like him. I want to walk that path. But when I read the Bible, I was like, why is it so dry? And when you read those poems here, you are in the middle of what you would call a shamanic ritual, a shamanic communion with creation. And yet all those terms of the Holy Father and angels and these things, and the necessity of being healthy and really living from the land, this is all brought in too. So there's so much richness already that we can actually find in these communities that are open to everything, as you said, and then also find out how much richness there is in those conventional religious lifestyles, and these have a lot to do with our health, because if we are in line with what we believe, if what we really believe doesn't have to be convinced by preaching it again and again, but we are actually living it, then it goes into our heart and into our cells, and then our cells radiate it. And when they radiate it, then we are of course fulfilled and filled up with this divine belief, and we are also able to infect in a positive way others with it.
Dankeschön, mein Herr. Hast du ein bisschen Wasser? Ein
Ja, ja.
Brindis, ein Prosit.
Prosit.
To experiencing the flavor, substance, lifestyle, and healing of these great prophets, these great books, and these great gods. Amen.
Amen. Prosit.
So I want to take you, Albert Emmanuel, from the ground to the mind, body, and spirit of the Homo sapien who's living on the ground. Even if you're an airplane pilot or an acrobat, you're living a lot on the ground. So if you take a person whose heritage for millions of years, not Homo sapiens, but all the people that we're descended from, were touching the ground, working with the ground, working with trees, rivers, oceans, animals, birds, all these things. And then you remove that environment and you say, okay, now you're going to be in an apartment. You're going to be in a condominium. You're going to be in a house. You're going to be living in your car, whatever. Now you're denatured and you're not touching the ground, which does something in the scientific research shows that just by touching the ground with our fingers, not talking about grounding, there's another thing that happens to us neurologically and systemically just from touching the ground. So, there are plenty of articles, just look that up, YouTube it, article search, what have you. And so that's one piece. Then the idea of removing weeds from an area where we want to grow. So weeds aren't all bad. They're doing a lot of good things. But from an area we want to grow a vegetable garden, we want to remove the weeds, prepare the soil, make the microorganisms and the worms, if they're worms, very happy. So we grow soil, we don't grow plants. So that's something else to look up. And if we do that as modern Homo sapiens or our ancestors 100 years ago were doing that, it does something to us and it profoundly affects, normally in a positive way, especially if our garden is working. So there's different levels of that thing working. And if you tour through Germany and Austria, these homes that have been there in the family for 300 years, you'll often see the same garden that's been there for 300 years, and they've often got their act down, as we say in English. They have their act down and they know exactly what to do. So when I go through those towns with these old homes and with these gardens, these people seem to be doing very well, oftentimes with a small garden that's giving them what they need and it gives them that connection. So if we remove that and we live in Vienna and we're in our apartment, we're in the metro, we're in the U-Bahn, we're in all these things, and then we go to work, and then we go to the shopping store and we buy our vegetables, and then we go home and we may go to the gym, what have you. There's this disconnection from nature. And I think Dr. Freud, who was in the 1800s and just a little bit in the 1900s in Vienna, I want to do an interview. If you happen to know anybody who's got some interest or expertise in Dr. Freud, my thought is that if his patients lived more natured lives and they were getting touched by nature, they're drinking fresh water, they were moving their bodies, they were with communal people, they would have had less psychiatric problems. And I'm not saying that you can remove psychiatric problems from hunting and gathering and farming people, but if you're doing something in nature and in that communal setting and getting vitamin D, it reduces the severity of all of your psychiatric and psychological issues that you have. And I think I'd like to talk to somebody about Dr. Freud, who I call an office and lab potato, because he's smoking. He's in a place where other people are smoking indoors, and he wasn't experiencing life like you and I are experiencing in a farm, in a forest, in a field, in the ocean, that type of thing, which I think if I didn't do that, I would need to go see Dr. Freud. Your thoughts, Albert Emmanuel?
Yeah, I think you're touching quite a core topic that has been brought up more and more now since we've all experienced lockdowns and basically shutdowns in the last few years. And what the interesting thing that through that people actually saw the necessity of using nature as a refuge camp. So what I actually experienced very much, and I've been moving out to the countryside for exactly those reasons you mentioned. Also, because my spirit was so much calling to it already in 2017. So I was very much in the lucky zone of actually being in near the woods and being in the countryside when all these shutdowns and lockdowns happened. But what I know from people that were in the cities is that especially in Vienna, everybody went to the Wienerwald. Everybody actually left their apartments also because it was just crowded. It was the whole family together, and we know that that can be quite chaotic. And there was no bars, there was no no urban entertainment. So what did people do? They went into the forest and they started to see how much joy there was in just doing those walks. So the focus, I think, globally of the first world of the urban population by locking them into the city actually got shifted towards these healthy environments that definitely are there to calm the soul. Once you go into the forest, it's almost like stepping to a cathedral. Everybody knows that. And this is the great thing. Spiritual and non-spiritual people agree on that. Going into the forest, going into nature is something great. Hiking is something great. And it is more than just a walk in the green. We all know that while we are doing that, we are experiencing creation. And even the biggest atheist can stand there and just have his jaw drop to the ground when he experiences on the top of a mountain a sun going up. This is like, bam, there is no need to explain it. It's just there. So I'm quite sure that what you are saying is absolutely true. The contact with nature, we as a Homo sapiens that has lived in nature far more and far longer than in urban areas, is a necessity, is absolutely important for our well-being of our souls. We need the not only the contact with it, we also need the space around us and being also a little bit away from the others. So a human being can be thrilled and absolutely inspired by another human being like we are now while we are talking and exchanging ideas thousands of kilometers away from each other, and still the little bulbs in our brains are shining. But if we're everybody's sticking too much together, then every now and then there's this need to, I need air. And if you have that in a green environment and you are in this cosmos where everything is connected to each other, then your soul actually gets brought into a harmonic state. There are tons of researches, so including the fact that in Japan it has already come into a common medicinal prescription to let a patient walk the a garden, a park, or a forest for a certain amount of time and doing certain meditational practices called Shinrin Roku. I'm quite sure you've done a podcast on that too. So these things are so off the hand, as we would say in German. It's so clear that looking for arguments that this is a truth is really not necessary anymore. Yeah.
Just looked up our contact by interest, Sigmund Freud, and he was born in 1856 in Freiburg in Marin in Moravia, Austrian
Hmm.
Empire, now Czech Republic. Guess where he died?
I would say Vienna.
No, he died in 1939, and he died in Hampstead, which is part of London, England, in 1939, September 23rd.
Oh yes.
Neurology, psychotherapy, psychoanalyst. He was a neurologist, founder of psychoanalysis. So all the stuff that he did was very important. I would not discount that. But in his picture on Wikipedia, he's holding a small cigar. So my guess is he had a toxic life if he's around that cigar and all the people indoors where in Vienna it could be cold 7 months of the year. So you may have the windows shut and you're trying to keep warm, so you keep those shut, and then you're wearing all these outfits like tweed and heavy wool, and you're just being filled. They don't wash those things very often, so you're smoking and you've got that in your clothes, and they didn't think anything of it. Since in history, we're often not thought of it like we think in the modern era. We can do another podcast on scents and the changing of hygiene and these types of things. But and then he has a beard, so his beard's filled with smoke. So I'm thinking that he's a very caring, hardworking, helpful person. But if I were his Sifu, I would say, get him some more ventilation, get him out of the office, let him work 4 to 6 hours per day, not 10 to 14 hours. I don't know if that's a schedule, but that's my guess. Not many of these high performing people, you can't. Louis Pasteur was that way, workaholic, and they didn't. They moved around when they were kids, but they got into these interests and these deep passions very early in life, which was how they were able to create these incredible things. Bruce Lee was a workaholic. Many of these people who created these, Steve Jobs, they don't have typically balanced lives where they check out of the matrix for a little bit and they work with people like us and other Sifu guru wellness people, psychologists, have downtime with their friends. They don't often do that. So they get into that realm, and that's where they're able to produce this vast body of work. Maybe Albert Emmanuel, share some of your thoughts on any of that, or workaholic type of
Mm.
lifestyle, and toxic vapors that might be
Yes.
around us.
Yes. So basically, I mean, adding to my knowledge of biography of Freud, he was not only doing a lot of tobacco, but he was actually also experiencing with cocaine, and all kinds of other substances. And I will be now very honest and clear about what I've already seen in those people that you were describing, visionaries, people who are, artists, and also workaholics in the sense that they are creating a project of their own, and Sigmund Freud was definitely one of them. He was researching the human psyche, and not only with bad results. There were a few people who had like an eye opening. And I'm absolutely with you that combined with a good lifestyle in summer, which I have to say, even many Viennese folk would would actually do at least in summer. That's what they call the Sommerfrische. So most of the people who were very much in the city always used to have like a little farmstead, or a little house in the green, which they would kind of constantly go out to chill out. And when they were writing a lot, they would do that. So I wouldn't be surprised if even Sigmund Freud and his crowd would every now and then also do that. But it was definitely not enough. And what still kept them alive so long, and what you always see with, especially with artists who are kind of smoking like, like machines, one after the other, and still they are so in the zone, that the for some reason, and I can only describe that as some kind of an inner awakening, the divine spark of creativity that can actually create an immense amount of hormones, adrenaline, that actually keep you above this level of toxicity that you are constantly surrounded with, because what you are believing in and what you are living in is so nourishing, or at least is so much driving you. I would not say it was nourishing, but definitely driving you, that you can go into with this lifestyle for quite a long time, as long as you are creating and constantly creating the next book and the next idea. You usually stay in this level, and you are quite good with anything that approaches your health. Once, however, you feel like my work is done. I don't want to, there is no spark in me anymore. bam, you pay the price. And then everything that was toxic around you collapses inside or above you. And yes, remember now that he actually had to flee because he was Jewish, and so he had to be outside of the country, and he actually got help. So yes, I think the what we are doing now in our great research, not only in my nonprofit organization, the Alela Yoga Foundation, but also what you are doing. That's the whole scene of wellness that has been, I think, also brought to a new level with the marriage of coaching and mindfulness and mindset, is to get all these treasures that people like Freud, like C.G. Jung, Viktor Frankl, um, so all those big thinkers that actually closed themselves into their little shells and were like workaholically creating these theses, can now be brought into a context of a lifestyle that is natural, that is really like creating environments where healing can happen on so many levels. And so my big vision also for the pain-free centers of the future will be a mixture of a community, a wellness center, and an ashram, in which intellectual property, as intellectual content, like what Freud brought to us, actually is tested in this new environment, and people with severe problems should have the access of both. First, we kind of establish that our system is alkaline and is well fed with vitamins, so that everything is already in a good level. But then we have to really address that toxic way of thinking, and especially if the toxic way of thinking is connected to I am a loser. I cannot do anything. What is my worth? Then every now and then having an idea of where this comes from, and if has it a connection to father or mother, has it a connection to your sexuality that was maybe suppressed, is a very helpful extra tool. And then we will actually put it into practice by giving him like Kundalini exercises or tantric exercises, or a space where he actually can literally free himself of these mindsets in a setting where a group can actually carry him through. Mm.
So, Albert Emmanuel, I wanted to finish up one little statement on Freud, and then maybe we can go through in our last maybe 3 to 4 to 5 minutes, some steps that people, regular people who have busy schedules, can look to and test on the pain relief side of things, just some easy steps. So we'll bring that from deep and philosophical to some real concrete things that busy people that don't have the time to go on a long journey of healing right now, but some maybe quicker things that a busy person might be able to do. The Levant, I mentioned that before in speaking about La Levante, I think it is, or El Levante, I can't remember. So the wind coming from the south of Spain and the east. So the Levant area are the countries bordering on the eastern Mediterranean Sea, often thought of as extending from Greece to Egypt. So think about the dried areas of broken rock that become sand, and the wind beats it and it becomes finer sand. So the Levant wind from that area, when it's blowing the right way, can deposit that sand and dust onto places like Spain. So that's the Levant. So interestingly, I didn't know this before we started today, but Freud is from the Galician Jews, and people think of Galicia in España, but this is different. They're also called Galicianers, and they're members of a subgroup of Ashkenazi Jews originating in the Levant, having developed in the diaspora of the Kingdom of Galicia, or Lodomeria, and Bukovina, from contemporary Western Ukraine and from southeastern Poland. So really interesting part of that Jewish history and the Ashkenazi history. I often find when I read about people who I guess were pioneers, and some people I've interviewed who are athletically minded, including the person who started America's most famous juggling troupe, starting back in the 70s when he was at college in UC Santa Cruz. He's still juggling now in his late 70s, and they're called the Flying Brothers Karamazov. And so this person told me in the beginning of our interview, it's not uncommon when I interview people that have that special drive and that special period of creativity. They tell me they've got some portion of their DNA is Ashkenazi Jew. How interesting that Dr. Freud also has that.
The talented people connected to the Ashkenazi or to Judaism. And I'm quite sure that we have talent everywhere, and talent that is really like worth researching. But of course, you're hitting a spot of my heritage. My grandmother was half Jewish, so I do have some kind of a blood belonging to this kind of I would say culture that is very much connected to intellectual at least to the way of how life is seen in a level of complexity that in the end also puts a clear spot on creativity and bringing things into life. So it's not just about contemplation and thinking in the mind what could be, but actually what is, and what can we derive from that? What kind of laws, what kind of basically thesis can we take from that and put it into life and test it there? I feel that in the very end, also not only research, but also content that is created in a way that it actually is also being able to be sold, that it creates a value for others. I would now put that into connection that is very much in this culture too. And this is something that I have seen in my way of living and lifestyle, that has brought a lot of knowledge and cultures constantly together because of this constant curiosity of what do you do in your culture with ideas of right thinking, right mindset, right lifestyle, and what is our background, and where can we actually take out, collect those gems, and maybe put them into a concept that then again can be transported in a ideally very very charming way, in a way where wit and humor are part of the way how we kind of interact with other people. And this again for me is something that has to do with the Jewish culture too. So yes, I do relate very much to this these kind of people who have all these layers, and where I feel that my approach with body, as the physical approach, kind of fills a gap, whereas most of them are very much in the mind. And my grandmother was very much in the mind, although she had a strong body. The culture with the body, like me being also a classical dancer and an acrobat, and you mentioned juggling, so I was doing a lot of event things where artistry was part of it. So I had to work my body as an instrument every day, basically. And from there, this curiosity, what comes from here, how does it affect this, and what can it expand, is basically, I would say, the opposite approach. The ones are just very much here and start to dilute into the body, and I came from the other side. I was working this, and then started to see what is behind that, what is kind of the higher meaning of these practices. Yeah.
So creativity, I would probably lead, based on our conversation and having a new vein of wisdom perhaps come in, that the idea of creativity is a way of surviving, of thriving, and of connecting with ourselves. Because part of being in your own body and experiencing pain and wanting to build function and more pain-free living back, you have to be creative in the way you look at it. You can't just walk in and take one pill. Although I have taken sometimes one pill for an anti-inflammation or something, and it knocked out the pain completely. But if you have more of an enduring pain, the one pill and the multiple pills may not do a whole lot for you. So, can you walk us through, Albert, Emmanuel, some of the steps for that a busy person could consider when they step into that little moment they have of creatively assessing their pain and then looking to not just mask the pain, but to acknowledge it and maybe take us through some of the steps that come after those two pieces, acknowledging it and assessing it.
Yes. So Sifu, with pleasure. So I think the most important aspect of approaching pain for a busy person is for me to start changing the relationship towards it. So in the sense of pain is bad, to pain is very interesting, important, and already bears most of the information for its healing. So usually we are so busy with things that we don't take care of usually of our physical body, and definitely not on our well-being in the soul. So sooner or later I will be confronted with some kind of pain due to my lifestyle. And the first approach that a busy person will do, I cannot deal with this pain. This pain is a problem now. This pain is actually getting into my way of getting my work done. My busyness is actually endangered. And if I want to get it to kind of erase it, I will pop the pill, as you would actually have said it before. And instead of basically first of all saying I want to erase it, is okay, it's there now. I will be first of all start dealing with it on a long-term relationship. I know it's going to come back again and again. So instead of trying to erase it, I will start to build it into my routine of my very daily practice or daily lifestyle, which can be even just 10 minutes of giving time and space. If we are now talking about what most of the pain issues are, back pain or a pain in our through the unhealthy way how we are sitting, usually like this in front of the computer, I will give myself the luxury before starting my work day that I will address these areas of the body. And in the case of back pain, I will do some exercises that actually will maybe be painful in the beginning, but will create a comfort zone afterwards. So if I'm like this all the time, a quite painful exercise would be to, I'll just try to show you guys here because it's actually not hard to see. Let's see if this is possible, like this. Just to do a back bend like this and just hold it. Maybe you should roll your shoulders. Now, if you try to do this for at least 3 minutes, this is going to be very painful. Actually, your stomach muscles will be aching. Your back pain will be aching. Most of the parts here around the pelvic area, it will ache like hell. And you will actually invest into this pain. And if you can do 3 minutes, you're good. If you can do 5 minutes, you're excellent. And you will do this every time you start sitting in front of a computer. So before you even open your laptop, you will be doing this. Then you will be sitting in front of the laptop for, let's say, 3/4 of an hour. You get up, you do the other 5 minutes. That's already 10 minutes of pain management workout. And before you go home, you will do it again. And maybe before you go and sit in front of your TV or sit again at your dinner table, you will do it again. And this is not something that is very that's taking up much of your time, because sometimes you have to wait for the bus, or sometimes you have to wait until the computer is loading up. Anyway, this is basically spare time. You do these exercises and you will see that the pain that you're experiencing and the relief that you're getting will create an amount of actually very beautiful feelings in your body. The endorphins will just rush you over. You will be maybe be getting a little high on that. And your body, after doing this for a few days, 10, 12 days, will start wanting it. It will start saying, yes, I need this, this high feeling of pain and pleasure. I want to experience both. And your attitude towards pain will start changing the more you will be dealing with this positive and pleasurable pain, which usually people who are into sports or athleticism, I learned it in ballet school, only learn because they kind of shape their body through pain and see the results that it brings, not only in the beauty of the physique, but actually also in these wonderful feelings of pain relief when the training is over and you feel that your flexibility and your strength has grown. So this would be kind of, in a nutshell, what a busy person could do on a daily scale.
Good steps. I've been interested in the last year and a half by the McKenzie stretches. Have you heard that name before?
Hmm. Absolutely.
So Dr. McKenzie in Australia, I believe, was the person who saw that we're bent over this way and the spine doesn't want to be in that one position. It has to be in all positions. So he's getting people to go back and get the curve experience the other way to open it up so we don't have bulge discs and all these other problems that we can have because of doing things in one way and for long duration. So take a look at the McKenzie stretches on
Yeah.
YouTube and you'll see some really good information. So I'm Sifu Slim. I've written 3 books and working on more on human performance, wellness, sedentary behavior, sociology, and lifestyle. And you can find them at Sifu, S-I-F-U, Slim.com. I have 2 different YouTube channels. You can also find them on my website. And I'm always looking for interesting, passionate people. They could be people that have written books. They're people who are working in this field, or people who've studied a certain thing, or just have really great stories. All those people I'm interested in, not just wellness and athletics and human performance, which is where I started, but more like Joe Rogan, where it's an open format. We can talk about anything on this program. So those are some of the things I'm looking for, and I'm also available for coaching and speaking at conferences and webinars and those types of things. So sifuslim.com, aloha on that, and now over to Albert Emmanuel to share his thing that he's seeking and his website.
Thank you, Sifu. My name is Albert Emmanuel Kessler Schenk. Even my path right now, which started as a performing artist and developed into a natural healer, and now becoming more and more a community coach and lifestyle coach, with the clear focus on being able to manage pain in body and soul, is summed up in my work, which I called the Alela Yoga. Alela, so www.alela-yoga.com. It's basically ALELA. It is my name, Albert Emanuel, and the A stands for Academy or Ashram. We have a YouTube channel that is called also Alela Yoga, and a Telegram channel, the Alela community Telegram group. And we are constantly researching on the topic of the ideal lifestyle for the partnership, the family, the community, and the individual. There are free research groups that you can join. Most of them are in German, but we have quite a few of international guests too, and we can always create a new one. And every, I would say, like 6 or 7 weeks, there is a seminar where all these topics around the cycle of the year are addressed in a seminar on and offline. We are actually now preparing here in La Palma for a seminar, an Alela seminar in the field of all the pain issues that come up in partnership and sexuality, and the necessity of connecting also on a deep level with nature. And we will be progressing in June with the biggest potential for the human the human development. So feel free to contact us, and nice to see if we can also help you very much in your projects as business builders or as community founders.
Wonderful, Albert Emmanuel. So I'll say Albert Emmanuel's website again, ALELA. We call it a dash in English, yoga.com. It's actually a hyphen. A dash would be longer, but people use the word dash, so I'm just going to use that. And you use the word minus. Do you say minus auf Deutsch?
Yeah, minus, yeah. Yeah.
Minus. And do you have another website about how to heal your heart.at?
Yes, it's still online, but it might be taken down in the next half year, but still you can check it out, www.howtohealyourheart.at. There's where we are focusing really on the health coaching. However, my creative input and everything that I'm kind of really focusing on now is all about this communal lifestyle, and all my health knowledge flows into that. And the book that I'm now writing is also about that. So the ethics and the lifestyle values that you can kind of incorporate in order to be successful in as an individual and in community.
Do you know the word mini me?
The mini me's? You mean like the yes?
Yeah, maybe you could find a mini you to turn
Yeah.
that how to heal your heart.at over to that person, let them run with it. Maybe they could get something
Oh, I
out
would
of it.
love to do that. Yes, absolutely.
So, Albert, Emmanuel, and I were going to do a few more of these. And if you have any comments and things you want us to talk about in a future conversation, please jot that down below. And we're also asking for your likes and your subscribes, and also go over to Albert Emmanuel's YouTube page and like and watch some of his videos. And that keeps us sustainable, because we want to bring you healing, improvement, togetherness, connection, anything that we can bring you. We know a lot of people are busy. We know a lot of people might have disconnections in their life, and we work on that for ourselves every day. And without that, we wouldn't be able to bestow that on you. So that's what our role in life is, kind of like a medicine person, medicine man, medicine woman in a tribe. We want to bring all that wonderful wellness in mind, body, and spirit to you. Any last blessings you want to throw down to us, Albert Emmanuel?
Basically, just keep connected to what your body is saying. Listen to your body. No matter how busy you are, there's always 5 minutes, 3 times a day. You're taking it to brush your teeth. You can do that by listening to what your body has to say. And if you feel that you need to work on it and you're lost, now you have at least 2 people to ask for advice. And all the blessings to all that wants to be prosperous and abundant in yours.
Wonderful. We'll talk soon. Aloha, schönen Tag.
Hallo.
Adios.
Alles Liebe. Danke dir.
Okay.